No problem.
Welcome. Test. Far away. Welcome, everybody, to our council meeting for Tuesday, June 20th. First on our agenda is our invocation and pledges, which will be led by Councilman Merritt this evening.
Thank you. If you all rise for a moment. Thank you for the opportunity to join here this evening to do the business of our city. Let us be thankful for the recent days that we've had in the past to honor our fathers, to honor the opportunity for the Juneteenth celebration, the newest federal holiday, for the freedom that it brought. Let us look forward to the Independence Day celebrations that our own city will have in the coming days. Let's be thankful for our first responders, all of those who protect us. Let us make the decisions that are necessary for our city to move forward, to improve, and be a cohesive unit. In your name we pray, amen. And if you'll follow me, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance first. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now if you'll join me with the Texas Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you.
So next up are our ceremonial items, and first up is presentation of the Employee of the Month Award to Oren. So the City of Congress has a strong culture that nurtures respect, where we value everyone's opinion and acknowledge their perspective. We strive for excellence and consistently look for ways to do our very best. We believe in accountability, we care and trust. These are the city's core values. Thus is our core culture, which is called REACT. The leadership of the City of Farmers Branch appreciates the effort, dedication, and time our employees put into their job. The city has a program to recognize employees for depicting these values. We appreciate and recognize our employees' hard work and dedication. Tonight, we recognize Juan Aranda, our Employee of the Month for the month of May. We would like to take this opportunity to express our admiration for Juan's outstanding performance. He has been consistently delivering exceptional results and has been a pivotal member of our team. Juan has demonstrated excellent leadership qualities as an equipment operator, third class. He has been instrumental in maintaining the high morale of our brush and bulk team, and has, as a result of Juan's actions, he was promoted to solid waste supervisor. We are deeply grateful for his contributions and recognize that our team's success would not have been possible without him. On behalf of the team, Juan, we extend our sincere appreciation to you and are privileged to have you as a valuable member of our team. So we have this lovely award for you. Turn around and show Jeff, get a picture. Shane, you want to
I do, yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, what we're in here kind of underestimates what Juan's done for the team. He stepped up in a big way as an equipment operator 3 and kept the team going through a pretty challenging time period for our operations. As a result of his efforts, he was soon promoted into a solid supervisor to replace the person who's no longer with the city. So I can't thank Juan enough for him keeping the team together, keeping me informed of what was going on so I could do my portion of the job. But Juan has been a great teammate ever since he's gotten here. I look forward to the day he actually gets to be a supervisor because right now your brush and bulk crew consists of 3 people. So all that brush and bulk y'all set out gets picked up by him and 2 other guys. So we look forward to trying to get his position backfilled and get him to be a supervisor we promoted him to be. But in the meantime, I can't thank him enough and for the way he interacts with others. If you get a chance to meet him, greet him, I think you'll see the same. So thank you, Juan.
All right, next up is E2, to recognize David Murray of the Parks and Recreation Department for 35 years of dedicated service to the City of Farmers Branch. Where's David? Good. David Murray started with the City of Farmers Branch in April 1988 as a part-time employee. He was quickly promoted to Laborer 1 in May of 1988. David was promoted to Equipment Operator 2 in October of 1988. In July of 2000, he was again promoted to Equipment Operator 3, and in October of 2011 was reclassified as a crew leader. In August of 2021, he was promoted to Chemical Specialist 2. While climbing the ranks in the Park and Rec Department, David has received extensive training and earned a myriad of professional certifications, making him an expert in his field. He currently develops and implements programs to eliminate pests and weeds on all park properties in the city, utilizing specialized equipment and best management practices. David is responsible for diagnosing plant and turf problems, recommending appropriate treatment, and executing plans to resolve any issues. Additionally, he operates various pieces of heavy equipment, such as backhoes, box blades, and skid loaders. Sounds like fun to me. He's assisted in numerous renovation and construction projects, including the Barney Wood Park, J.C. Park, the Philip Shelby Hempstock Skate Park, Oren Good 2 baseball field, and Raymond De Leon T-ball field, to name a few. David also has experience in fence installations, concrete work, and plumbing. Outside of work, David and his wife, DeLynn, enjoy traveling and cruises, spending time with the friends and their close-knit family, and spoiling their grandchildren. David Murray's unwavering dedication to the City of Farmers Branch is evident in his remarkable 35-year tenure, which he has tirelessly served the community with passion and commitment. As a great team player, he consistently goes above and beyond, leveraging his extensive experience and fostering a collaborative environment to enhance collective goals and enhance the Park and Recreation Department. Let's give a hand to David. Gary, you want to?
I'll just say a few words about David. Known him a long time. When we all first started here, we were just kids. Believe that or not. It's been a long time ago. But he is great at what he does. You can't put a price tag on experience. And when you have experienced people at a high level, you definitely can't, there's no way you can evaluate that monetarily. And he's great at what he's done. He's not only a great employee, but he's a great friend. Believe it or not, you create relationships when you work with somebody for a long time. And David is the type of guy, his character is great. If I needed him at 2 in the morning, I could call him, he'd be there. And I know that. Now, Delim might not like the phone ringing at 2 in the morning, but he would be there. And he's great. He's done an outstanding job here. And I just want to say thank you, David. And it's a pleasure to be able to have a team of people, of co-workers that are as great as these guys are. He does a great job. Thanks, man.
So items of community interest for this council meeting of June 20th, 2023. Help us turn the dirt for Hoya. The city will host a groundbreaking for the new Hoya Playground at Oren Good Park on Monday, June 26th at 10 a.m. and you're invited. Enjoy us for a ceremonial dig, free swag, and light refreshments. Join us at the southeast corner of Oren Good Park near Tomfield Road and Valley View. The Bella Lane extension is now open, connecting Vitruvian Park and Alpha Road. Our Mayor Terry Lynn helped celebrate the milestone last week with a ribbon cutting. This extension will connect the Vitruvian development and Alpha Road through the Dallas College Brookhaven campus. You may have had to detour through Farmers Branch recently. TxDOT has a massive expansion of I-35 underway between LBJ and Denton County. Our city traffic department continues to monitor and adjust traffic signal timings at key intersections to shorten the backups. However, these closures will be in effect for the foreseeable future, according to TxDOT. Sign up for text alerts to be aware by texting 35E Phase 2 to 469-353-2101. We want your honest feedback on the City of Farmers Branch. You'll be able to provide it during our National Community Survey that's underway right now. Postcards and survey packets are being mailed out currently. Please complete the online questionnaire promptly so that we can collect your input. Your link, your specific link, will be printed on the postcard you receive. Are you planning a garage sale? Don't forget to register it with the city at least 24 hours in advance, and that registration must be posted at the sale. Residents can do so at farmersbranchtx.gov. On June 6th, our City Council passed a new solicitation ordinance for Farmers Branch. Some of the new restrictions include solicitation is only allowed Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., and citizens or businesses can prohibit solicitation on their property simply by posting signs. Read the entire ordinance at farmersbranchtx.gov. Come have coffee with your mayor and city council at Native Coffee. The MetroCrest Chamber is hosting coffee with the council on Wednesday, June 21st from 8 to 9 a.m. Come to Native Coffee, that's at 4319 Alpha Road. Celebrate your sweet tooth with Willy Wonka at the Firehouse Theater this weekend. The delicious adventures of Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory light up the stage in this captivating adaptation of Roald Dahl's fantastical tale. June 24th and 25th only. Get those tickets at thefirehousetheater.com. And get your firecracker pass now for our July 1st Independence Day celebration. It'll feature a spectacular fireworks show, live music by Empire 6, a free kid zone, and festival food favorites. Admission is free for Farmers Branch residents with that firecracker fast pass, and it's $5 for non-residents. Those passes, by the way, are at most city facilities, including the Recreation Center and Mansky Library. And as always, you can sign up for city news at farmersbranchtx.gov. Mayor?
Thank you. Next up is a report on study session items, and I'm going to be very brief. We had a pretty full agenda this afternoon of things to cover. I'm not going to go deep into each one. You can see the full session at farmersbranchtx.gov, but there were some highlights. We did receive a report from our Director of Environmental Services regarding the Camelot landfill and the remaining life of the facility. In addition, we had some discussion about fee changes at the rec center, and then we received the biennial report from the Arts and Culture Committee, and we started to take a look at the Multicultural Task Force and get that in place. We have made some changes to the consent agenda for this evening. Item A7 that was discussed, combining Park and Rec Boards, Historical Preservation Board, and Mansky Library Board, will now be item J6 on the agenda. And then on the consent agenda, as it's related to the consent agenda, item H2 will now be discussed as item J3 under regular items. Item H6 will be discussed as item J4. And items H8, H9, and H10 will be discussed as J5. For more information regarding items of community interest, you can go to, again, farmersbranchtx.gov, and you'll be able to see that there. So next up is our consent agenda. And again, I just mentioned the changes that have been made. We do have two people that have signed up to speak. First up is Amber Rayleigh. And let me just remind you, or everybody in here, that there is a 3-minute time limit for each citizen to speak, with a reasonable limitation on speakers. Anyone wishing to speak shall be courteous and cordial. No disparaging or inflammatory remarks directed at any member of the City Council or staff or anybody else will be tolerated. So when I call you up, please state your name and your full address. Thank you.
Howdy, Amber Rayleigh, 14521 Cypress Point, Farmers Branch. I want to thank you for your service. It's a gratitude habit that I learned from my neighbor, the previous chair of Planning and Zoning, to recognize the servant leadership of City Council as well as boards and commissions or our Youth Advisory Council. Here I'll pause to read a definition of servant leadership from Better Up, an organization comprised of my former colleagues from the industrial organizational consulting world. The servant leadership style is based on the idea that leaders prioritize serving the greater good. Leaders with this style serve their team, their organization, their city first. They don't prioritize their own objectives. Employees and residents in a service and servant leadership environment are more likely to feel that their voices are heard. With 3 brief examples that will probably extend into my next speaking moment, I'd like to discuss servant leadership and valuing the diversity of voices in Farmers Branch and beyond. First, a thank you to Mayor Terry Lynn and this council for the June 3rd proclamation of Pride Day. Recognizing the value and contributions of members of our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, plus population. Honoring Pride in June recognizes the Stonewall protest and subsequent civil rights movement in response to past and present marginalization and discrimination of this vibrant community and many of the youths in our community. Part of this celebration, like yesterday's Juneteenth, is an honest evaluation of the ways that we reproduce oppression and harm when we do not make space at the table for a diversity of representatives and intentionally or unintentionally suppress news and views. To me, this represents a recognition of the inherent worth and dignity of every person, as well as justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, all qualities of servant leadership. Thank you for your service. I'll continue with my next remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Tony Pham.
Hi, Council. Tony Pham, 2707 Columbus, Grand Prairie, Texas. I know I'm not from Farmers Branch, but I'm here on other matters as well. But just before I get to those matters, later in the agenda, I wanted to speak about H12 item on abolishing the Youth Council. Just quickly looking around the room, I see that there's a lot of people that are not as young as I am. And that it is very much an issue within local governments that we need a lot more people young like I am or even younger to actually be participating and be good stewards of our governance and building the communities from that point forward. And by abolishing the youth council does not do a very good job at building the communities that the youth like I am, like the younger generations would want. And so one of the things that I like to say to city councils, because I'm an urban planner, I'm an urban planner student, and I go to a lot of cities and I talk to a lot of people in local governments, that if you would like to prosper, you have to think about the youths and you have to think of the younger generations and the cities of which you're building for them. And by keeping them out of the governance structure, doesn't do a very good job at that, and that leads to them leaving your city. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So, Council, that is all we have signed up to speak on those two items. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda amended. Again, let me just restate. H2 becomes J3, H6 becomes J4, H8, 9, and 10 become J5, and will be discussed as regular items.
Mayor, before we continue, I do have a question.
Yes.
Ben, or maybe Stacy, or I don't know who the appropriate person is to ask this question of, can you recap to me the success rate of the Youth Advisory Council and part of the reasons why we are not continuing with that, as well as what our plan is to move forward and incorporate the youth into our city government?
Yes, thank you, Councilman Roman. So the Youth Council was started 3 years ago. It was a 2-year pilot program. We opened it up to all the schools in the city of Farmers Branch and then residents so they may go to schools outside of Farmers Branch as well. This last year when we tried to recruit, we went to the school district again, met with the school counselors, met with all the different school principals that we could, sent out all of our notices, invitations, created our collateral to recruit, and we only had 2 students apply. Despite our best efforts, we could not get students to apply for the program. Continued to try and get students to apply, and we ended up being halfway through the school year. We could not get enough student interest to participate in the program despite our best efforts for outreach.
And can you talk a little bit about what our Plan B is?
Correct. What we have found is that the Farmers Branch Chamber of Commerce has a very successful leadership boot camp program that has been very good at recruiting youth participants. So instead of having the traditional youth council, youth advisory council that we've had in the past, we will be using that mechanism to still help reach the youth. Since we couldn't get enough members to support a full youth council in Farmers Branch, that's the next best way to continue to invest in the youth and leadership in Farmers Branch for the future. They will still be able to provide a voice and be part of the discussion, but it's a way to make sure the program continues on an intent when the existing form was not successful.
Thank you, Ben. I don't have any other questions. Thanks, Mayor.
Anybody else? Okay, well, again, entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll be happy to make a motion to approve the amended consent agenda.
Mayor, I second the motion to approve the amended consent agenda.
Very good. We have a motion by Councilman Merritt and second by Councilwoman Bennett. If you would, please indicate your vote. Motion approves unanimously. Thank you. Next up is our regular agenda items. First up is item J1, consider contracts or services with nonprofit organizations and take appropriate action.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Perla Tavera. I am the Deputy Director of Finance presenting on behalf of Jawaria. She is on vacation, but I am sure she's watching online right now. So I'm going to go over a quick presentation if you have any questions at the end. So we're going to go over the timeline. I'm sure everyone's aware of the overview. So the contracts expire September 30th of this year, 2023, and in preparation for the budget, Jawaria has presented a funding amount and a contract term. So during the study session of April 18 and May 2nd, City Council reviewed and discussed the funding proposals for the nonprofit. And then on May 16th and June 6th, you actually had an annual update for all the nonprofit organizations. So today, I would just need direction in regards to the funding amount per organization as listed on the table of what was submitted. Would be option 1, or option 2 would be a funding amount per organization per the City Council direction. So here's the funding request for fiscal year 23 to 24 listed. And I'll come back to this because the next one is if you have any questions. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah. Councilman Merritt?
We have discussed this quite a bit, and so I just want to reiterate that we have contracts with all of these nonprofits, and several, including the chambers, are contract-based on performance. Is that still correct?
That is still correct of what was submitted, yes. And I do want to reiterate, these are, in the study session, you guys approved for 5-year contracts.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Councilman Jackson?
Thank you. And so you just mentioned that those contracts are 5-year contracts, whereas before they were 3-year contracts, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, can you kind of explain the background on changing the term of those contracts?
The background was, let's see, that Jawaria explained this on May 18th, and it seems like it was just a summarize of what was submitted for the fiscal year for better budgeting purpose, as we are starting to get a little bit more on the long-term budgeting.
So Ben, do you have some additional explanation there on that?
Yes, I'll jump in on that one. So when it comes to the nonprofit funding or contracts for service, because the chambers are in here and that's not nonprofit funding in that same element, but contracts for service is when we get to this, whether it used to be 1-year contracts or 3-year contracts, what we found is this will take a non-balanced amount of the council's time in the overall budget process. And so what I was looking for and what staff brought forward in a previous study session was, would council be even more comfortable with a longer-term contract, still contingent upon appropriation in the budget, so it doesn't tie the hands of future councils, but can we have one big discussion and have a contract we're comfortable with for a longer term that helps move us in the right direction, also gives some stability to the future of the budget when we know what we're spending. It also helps all these organizations better plan fiscally as well because they can know what to expect from the City of Farmers Branch. So both an efficiency and effectiveness element is why we've moved in that direction.
Okay, thank you, Ben. And so these contract for services last for 5 years, but each year the amount requested may change. Is that true? Or is it?
No, the contracts will be, they'll show the 5 years. Some will have a small escalator built into them, but for
Okay.
the most part, they're going to stay static and defined each year.
Okay, right. So some of them do have an escalator built into them.
Correct.
That's the clarification I was looking for. Thank you.
Ben, for the benefit of folks here or watching on TV, can you tell us which contracts have escalators built into them?
That's going to be the social service contract. So the chambers do not have an escalator, but the social service contracts do.
And so it'll be up to the council each year to whether or not they want to approve that escalator? Or is that an automatic?
Automatic, council still approves funding in the budget though. And we can always bring it back if there's a concern from the council. You know,
I'm happy to support the Farmers Branch Chamber's request, the MetroCrest Chamber's request, Family Place, Woburn Health Clinic, and the MetroCrest Safe and Sound Child Homelessness Initiative. The one concern I have is the large number for MetroCrest services. I have been inundated with phone calls from their elected officials and volunteers and former employees, people who currently use MetroCrest services, and surprisingly, they have asked me to not support the request. I don't think that that would be a fair assessment of the relationship that we have. And then, of course, we've had the large discussion last year around the budget cycle where we've heard a lot of residents come and express concern about the amount of money that we were providing to MetroCrest services at that time, which was close to $1 million. So I don't know how to quantify the amount of support. I think where I feel comfortable starting with is a 50% amount, whatever that amount ends up being. But I certainly don't want to be the one to halt the progress. I'm not going to vote against the budget should this not go. I just want to listen to the residents who've reached out to me and were very adamant about their concerns.
Councilman Baird, okay. I think funding for charitable requests, in my mind, is different than funding to the chambers, because I view the chambers, they are working hard to develop business, and they are the liaison between our small and medium-sized businesses throughout the city and our local government. But I also think it's important to note that when city manager is trying to put together a budget and he has requests from departments for all sorts of things, infrastructure related wise, and he's got $7 million more of requests than he does readily available funds, that deserves very, very serious consideration. And I've had a lot of mixed emotions about how to fund charitable requests, and as I did when I was on council for 6 years. I think it is important for the city to participate, and of course the council will be the ones voting to make that decision. But I am not sure that I want to readily accept escalator clauses in various contracts because I always want that final approval to rest with the council, because we don't know what will be facing us in next year's budget. So I think if you're telling me that we always have the final say-so on whether we accept that escalator or not, then I would be more inclined to accept your recommendation there.
Yes, and the contracts will come back at the next council meeting. So this is direction on the amounts. The contracts will be brought back at the next council meeting in coordination with the overall budget process.
Okay. So, council, are you all, is anybody else questioning any of the amounts that are listed here? Okay. Seeing none, this will
Well, Mayor Lynn,
give you the direction.
I need direction on MetroCrest services. I have one feedback amount, and I just need to see where the rest of the council sits on that amount so we know which amount to put the contract together for.
Councilman Merritt?
Well, I'll definitely show my hand. I'm comfortable with the number that's presented on the slide for social services from MetroCrest, as well as the other social services alignments that we have there. I think we're in a position to have a long-standing relationship with these organizations, and so therefore I think these are providing services, and we hear them on a quarterly basis come and present to us how they're helping our residents. So it is something that we're giving back to our residents and providing a service, and it's not just charity, it's a service that we do not, as a city, provide. And for a long-standing, more than 50 years, MetroCrest has been providing that service on behalf of the city. So I've shown my hand. I'm comfortable with the numbers.
Mayor, I too am conflicted on that number. In line with the other numbers, it's a large number. MetroCrest Services is a large organization, and they address an important need in our city. And I too agree that I believe that the city should participate at some level. When I think about this number in comparison with all the other numbers that we're going to be dealing with over the next few months in our budgeting process, and numbers we've seen to this point, we had a discussion earlier today about at what point do we have to start charging residents for their trash pickup, because we have some increasing costs around our landfill that we have to accrue for. And at some point, right now it's estimated in about 21 years, that landfill will be full. And we face the prospect of not only significant costs then as compared to now, but potentially hauling trash an hour or more away from our city, which is going to add to the costs. Another number that we've talked about is budgeting for arts and culture. You know, we all want arts and culture to be an important part of our community. But there again is another number to add to this budget where do we spend money in arts and culture, or do we spend money at MetroCrest Services supporting the needs that they fill? And so that being said, I'm flexible to what the council decides on the final amount. But at $227,000 a year for the next 5 years, it's over $1 million. And that seems like a really large number given these other expenses that our city is facing. And one I didn't mention, and we've talked about it a few times in the last few months, is our aging water and sewer infrastructure that needs attention to the tune of over $20 million in the next, 4 or 5 years. That's a really large number too. And so if we're not careful in some of these smaller numbers, if you will, we're not going to be able to meet those demands. We had a lift station failure just this past week that's requiring a big check. So again, I say that I'm conflicted with the amount. I'm not conflicted with the MetroCrest Services purpose and their place in our community. But the amount to me does seem to be a lot larger than what I'm able to digest at this point. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman?
I'm comfortable with the numbers as is. I'm not comfortable with the escalators. My discussion with you, Ben, and our one-on-ones have been other cities actually keep that money in-house, and they have their own services that they utilize that funding for, specifically for the social services, and the city manages that. We don't have that, and we don't have the ability or the bandwidth to do that. And that is why it's really important and imperative that we go ahead and lean in until, if there's a moment that we can take it back and we're willing to bring it in-house, that's a totally different discussion. But until then, we need to lean into the social services that we have here.
Councilman Rumlin, you got any other comments?
Yeah, the one thing I will just say is that, I work in the area of wealth management, and I have to sometimes have difficult conversations with clients about the instability of their ability to reach their financial independence. And sometimes what I have to tell them is you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of somebody else. And, it's a hard decision to make because of the nature of the services that they provide. But I'm trying to find a balance. I don't believe that the number is 0, but I don't believe that the number is 227,060. I'm just trying to find a compromise. I don't know that we're going to make everybody happy, but I know there's still going to be residents that will be upset at me for even a 50% amount, and there will be residents who are upset because of the 50% amount, but I'm just trying to find an in-between and a compromise.
What if we made a suggestion that if we approve what has been requested here, minus the escalator clauses on all of these for now, we still have the opportunity to re-review as we go through the actual budget process, correct?
For next year, yes, but you would have a contract next council stating these amounts as approved.
So we will have contracts in force
Correct,
come the next council meeting.
correct.
Okay.
So I just
Can
need
we have
direction.
those in force less the escalator clauses?
We can write the contracts that way.
Would that be amenable? I see 2 yeses. 3, 4.
I would have to see how it was written.
Okay.
Okay, I have your direction, so approval with this current funding request, correct?
With to
With-
be determined on
To
MetroCrest
be determined.
services, the rest can be written to the amounts with council's final approval pending the next meeting where they can further change the amounts at their discretion.
Perfect.
But we have direction to go.
Thank you.
Very good. Next up is item J2. Consider approving Resolution 2023-058, authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Dean Electric Incorporated, DBA Dean Construction, in the amount of $1,204,762.65 for the construction, grading, plumbing, and electrical services for the improvements at Oya Playground at Oren Good Park.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Rachel Arroyo, Director of Parks and Recreation. Today, I'm here to seek approval authorizing Dean Construction to provide general contractor services for the construction of Hoya at Oren Good Park, located at the corner of Tom Field and Valley View, in the amount of $1,204,763, which came in under budget. The park will include a main playground with a 27-foot sphere and a top playground for over 25,000 square foot of play space. This is the final step and is essential to move forward with the construction and build of Hoya. With that, do you have any questions?
Council? Questions? It is important to note
I was going
that,
to say our slide is still,
oh, who's
Rachel, we're still
driving?
showing the social service and contracts for service slide.
I minimized it. No.
There it goes.
You don't have one? Okay, let me just get rid of this. Okay.
Thank you.
So I was saying, it's important to note that this amount is coming out of the roughly $4 million already in-house for the, as part of the American Rescue Plan Act.
Correct.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve resolution number 2023-058 as presented.
Be happy to second that motion.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Bennett, second by Councilman Merritt. If you would, please indicate your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
Next on our agenda, which is J3, is actually item H2, which is consider approving Resolution 2023-089 to establish a multicultural event task force and take appropriate action.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jeff Fairchild, Special Events Manager in the Parks and Recreation Department. The presentation you see, I'm just going to go through a little bit quicker than I did today with and highlight some of the discussion points that came out of the study session. But here to discuss the resolution for the forming of the Multicultural Task Force. Quickly taking you back to February of this year, Council voted to create a multicultural event that would take place in the spring of 2024. Theme would be based on the traditions, music, art, food, customs of the cultures of resident Farmers Branch, and that task force include residents as well as stakeholders. Just some images here of what that event could potentially look like. The purpose would be to advise council on a lot of the elements that go into producing an event, such as site decor, food, programming, sponsorship, community outreach, educational aspects. But this task force would be helping advise staff on that. We would be meeting monthly here at City Hall, and then obviously amending that when we would meet as based on what the committee worked best for them. And then we do want our members on this task force to also volunteer at the event. We feel that's a very important part of their involvement, is to also be there for the actual event itself. And then should council decide to sunset this provision for a future action at that time after the event takes place, would comprise of up to 15 members, 3 of which would be Parks and Recreation staff, myself and two of the special events team. And then here up to 12, mayor and council get up to 2 members appointed by them based on the applications received by those can be either residents. We kind of go into a little bit of defining what we're looking for in residents of the city who reflect the many diverse cultures, or persons stakeholders who not necessarily be residents, but would fit and align with what the goals of the task force are. And then some of the discussion about how we would, on the application itself, defining, what culture you're there applying, and then any other skill sets or any other things that would make them a good candidate to be on this task force. So that was the discussion that came out of the today in the study session. And then our timeline immediately upon approval is getting the word out through help of the city communications, Parks Department. There tomorrow that would be launched, and then roughly almost 5 weeks of applications to be those on the board's commission page there on the city's website, and then September 5th approval, and then hoping to launch our first meeting late September. Thank you. Questions?
I'm just going to say, I really welcome the idea of creating a event that is going to work to unite our city and bring people of different cultures together and celebrate that which makes all those individuals that make us a real community. I've never liked separating people out, and so I think this will be a big plus for our city, but it's only if we promote it properly and make sure that we have a really diverse cross-section of folks that are on the committee. So I trust the council will work to ensure that we have that. Councilman Merritt.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jeff, for the presentation. One of the things I want to reiterate what was discussed upstairs is we do have many diverse cultures that are representative in our community. And one of the first questions you had on the slide was, what would this event look like? And I want to get to the question there is the expectation of what a successful event will look like be the part of the task force coming up with what that would look like? Or is that a combination of the task force, staff like yourself, and the council? Help me understand the dynamic, if you could.
I think when the task force meets and the discussions start evolving, we would, define a success, and whether it be attendance, or how many inclusions of different cultures. I think it's kind of that committee would come to that consensus of what that would define as success, and then report that back to the city council. Hey, this is what we're thinking, how this would look and feel, and what the residents and the attendees can expect. And I think, does that kind of answer your question on that? Okay.
Do you believe that 6 months is enough time to execute a successful plan in this first iteration?
It's aggressive, sure, certainly, but I have full confidence in in our team, Parks Department, and the city as a whole.
As do I.
And I feel very confident this can be accomplished.
Thank you.
Councilman Jackson.
Kind of riding on Councilman Merritt's question, the time and just the amount of work that we're going to do to put this event together, a successful event. I'm wondering if as part of this resolution, if we have as part of the language to allow the task force to create, and I don't know if the language in there accommodates this now, I didn't see it, but to create like a subcommittee. Maybe it's a subcommittee that focuses on food or a subcommittee that focuses on specific areas, because this is going to be a big event. I'm excited about it, but it's going to be a big event for 15 people to coordinate in 6 months, meeting once a month. Now, I know they can meet more frequently, but I'm just thinking if they get in a pinch or if they deem it necessary to put together some type of subcommittee that can address a specific area of the event, does this resolution address that, or can it?
It does not specifically address it, but they have the inherent authority to create subcommittees of the task force to go out and study different aspects.
Okay, so there's an inherent authority
Yes.
under the resolution. Okay, that's good. I think it's going to be important because, again, it's going to be a really large event, and we want to do it well.
And I would encourage that. Obviously, it takes a village, and if someone on the task force says, hey, I've got a team in my, if it's a organization that they're part of that can extend the volunteer base, then I think we would want that type of involvement. And hey, we're specialty in food or music as our background, then we would certainly welcome that input and participation.
So along that lines, are we consulting with other cities or other event coordinators that have done this before? Are we getting some input from others that have been down this path to kind of help us?
Staff I personally have gone to some other events. I now will take that into putting that on my calendar. I know there was an email generated today of Richardson, where I live, is doing an event in November. So that's already on my calendar. So
Okay.
you can rest assured we're taking a hard look at other events. I just attended one in Garland last month. There, just kind of getting ideas and just seeing how, and that was their first year doing that. So you're starting to see some of these evolve. And so it definitely is on our radar.
Yeah, if some of those task force meetings or committee meetings are open to the public, I would encourage you and a part of our team to attend some of those as well as the events, just to make sure that we're thinking about things, because I really want to do this well.
And if you'd like to send staff around the country or the world to other festivals, we will certainly entertain that.
All right, thank you.
All right. No questions? No questions? Okay. Jeff, do you have an idea in your mind as to when this event might take place? First quarter?
Our third weekend in March, that third Saturday, that's what we're targeting.
Okay.
Yes, kind of
Okay.
lining up.
Obviously, weather being the biggest concern, so.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, that would be fine. This item is marked for action. Councilman Merritt?
Mayor, I'd be happy to make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-089 as presented.
Second.
If I could, if interrupt, there is a
sorry.
modification, right? There's a modification that needs to be made in here with respect to meetings outside of regular business hours.
I'm sorry, let's take a step back.
It does say meetings may become more frequent as necessary as the event date draws closer, and that's sufficient. So if the board decides they need to meet in the evenings, they can do that.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion from Councilman Merritt, a second by Councilman Roman. If you would, please indicate your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Next up is item J4, which is actually H6 on your agenda. Consider approving annual board, commission, and committee appointments for 2023-2024 for the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee, Municipal Drainage Utility System Advisory Committee, Planning and Zoning Commission, Senior Advisory Board, Sustainability Committee, Valwood Improvement Authority, and Zoning Board of Adjustment, and take appropriate action. Okay. All right, we have several folks that have signed up to speak to this item. First up is Andy Jones.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Andy Jones, and I live with my family at 12561 Prescott Place, Farmers Branch, Texas, 75234. Today, I rise in opposition to item J4, the constitution of the boards and commissions. I rise as a former member of the Planning and Zoning Commission because it has come to my attention that this process seems to have been done without transparency and without objectivity. And so my concern on that then becomes people are being appointed, people are being removed despite their terms not being expired, with merely an email that says the city needs to go in a different direction. And so certainly, in a non-transparent, non-objective scenario, one could perceive that this was a new administration removing political opponents and replacing them with others, but certainly that can't be the case. So there must be a merits-based or an evidence-based reason why people are being placed and people are being removed. And so I would ask that the City Council either A, provide that merits-based, evidence-based reason why people whose terms that are not yet complete are being removed to those people. Alternatively, do not remove those people. And finally, I think it's essential going forward for our city that we remove the politics from this process and create a merit selection panel that is nonpartisan and can select the best people with the best skills to do the best work for our city. Thank you very much for your time and attention today, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Next up is Mike McGinnis.
Mike McGinnis, 13220 Glad Acres Drive. I was recently informed of my termination from the Planning and Zoning Commission, along with two others, before the end of our terms. Though we had a joint meeting with the mayor and council last Monday, the mayor left quickly without having the respect to tell the three of us about the changes. We received emails from the city the next morning. Tonight, we will see the house cleaning of Farmers Branch volunteers who might have dared at some point to oppose our current mayor in his political career. We see a number of experienced, qualified citizens displaced from their service to the community under the highly questionable disguise of efficiency, or in our case, no disguise at all. The main consequence will be to keep future enthusiastic candidates for board service from volunteering, because now everything's political. For those voters not keeping score, 4 of the 5 current council members were recruited, sponsored, and mentored by the current mayor. No matter what your politics, that's not good for any city. The logical result is whatever he wants, he will get from this city government, and this is only the first example of the type of activity that will continue. I implore the reasonable council members to listen to facts and experts and not give in to one person's ideology. I also foresee the mangling of our master comprehensive plan, which could be a model of new city planning. It's like examples that you can see all over the Metroplex. Based on the mayor's comments, I predict it will be undermined to the point of keeping our city mired in the mid-century, unappealing bedroom community mentality that will repel modern young families. Our city in a park will become the city parked in the past. I hope you and the voters will recognize the heavy-handed takeover that has been this mayor's opening salvo to turn the city into his personal homeowners association, one of which I credit him with already destroying. The voters of Farmers Branch and the people recently terminated from serving have a right to a clear, truthful explanation without the smokescreen that hides the shame of cronyism. What other reasons are there for dumping experienced, qualified volunteers in the middle of their terms and replacing them with the mayor's buddies and supporters? I don't care much about myself, but I'm sorry for this city.
Next up is Joe Petraza. Joe Petraza.
Joe Petraza, 3510 Chelland Drive. I share the sentiment very much. I feel that this effort undermines Farmers Branch voters from before, because the people who were up here before you appointed and approved these individuals to serve on these boards for a term. And now you're proposing to remove them without cause or explanation. It's fair, that was not provided, before their terms are completed with zero transparency. So all that can really do is lead to speculation. I'm gonna bite my tongue on that, but I have to ask, just because I have to consider allowing the current members to complete their terms. I mean, because think about the culling of boards and commissions leads to two very bad things. It sends a message to citizens that if they don't align with or support current representatives, they don't have a seat at the table, or they could be removed from that table. Two, it sets a bad precedence that these boards and commissions can be politicized and at the whim of current leadership, elected leadership, with no explanation, right? So discourse should be celebrated, not feared. Don't weaponize the boards. Do the right thing here. And I know this format doesn't really allow back and forth, but I would love to understand the reasoning behind it. So maybe at some point you could provide that. And I know that board members serve at the pleasure of council, but council serves at the pleasure of the people.
Next up is Tony Pham. Oh. Yep, we did.
Tony Pham, 2707 Columbus, Grand Prairie, Texas. I just want to open my remarks by saying that I am an urban planning student, and I've been to a lot of cities around here, and I've been keeping a watch on just everything in general in DFW, and that I am an immigrant, a recently naturalized citizen of the United States of America, and my family immigrated here 6 years ago for two reasons: democracy and freedom. Today, City Council is considering whether to dismiss several of its commissioners from Parks and Rec, Planning and Zoning Commission, who have not reached to their term's ends, and appointing what is almost entirely new members, and so far as I can tell, fairly politicized appointments. Democracy at the end of the day works great when its citizens and its residents can trust its government. It's true that City Council appoints the commissioners of the boards and can set up the structures of the boards and council delegates the power to review the plans and developments to the citizen commissioners. And citizen commissioners return the recommendations, and it is up to council to even follow through the recommendation. It's true that they can follow the recommendation or not at all, and that's entirely fine. And if the city council is deferring to a board comprising of members representing little to no diversity of perspectives, backgrounds, views, etc., effectively not representing the public, not representing the people, the decision made by City Council will be in question by its public, and faith in the democratic structure will be shaken. I've heard rumors that council are selecting these appointees based on the qualifications and credentials, and I'm sure that these are very well-fine individuals. But I like to remind council, cities establish planning and zoning commissions as a response to the controversies and the failures perceived by the public arising from the fact that much of the planning done back in the days were done without citizens' inputs, and instead done at the time considered by professionals. And histories have shown that from time to time, the communities thrive on the design foundations of individual residents, not the distanced and unaccountable profession. Planning and zoning commissioners are selected not based on whether they know land use, variances, setback, code, development, etc., not because of that, but whether they can be effective community liaisons between the city and people and the communities they serve. And freedom works when its government can effectively represent its diverse residents in its boards and commissions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Amber Rayleigh. Amber Rayleigh.
Thank you, Amber Rayleigh, 14521 Cypress Point, Farmers Branch, Texas. Second, I'd like to share a personal story that is also a national story. In January of 1986, in my school classroom, I enthusiastically watched the launch of the Space Shuttle Challenger, which then turned to horror and great sadness. This was part of the inspiration for me and my troop mate to use the entirety of the proceeds of our Girl Scout cookie sales to send ourselves to space camp, just an hour's drive away from my childhood home. In my cohort, I had the role of pilot, and part of that training in servant leadership included learning from past tragedy to reduce the potential for future groupthink and decision-making. I'm wearing my NASA watch today, a reminder that a bunch of really smart people, certainly more intelligent than myself, can make mistakes, especially if they ignore their obligation to promote the free and responsible search for truth and meaning, as well as the right of conscience in our democratic process. Again, I'd like to thank you for your service. As third, I bring up the 2006-2012 lawsuits resulting from the Farmers Branch Housing Ordinance, which guidance from the U.S. Supreme Court and Fifth Circuit of Court of Appeals labeled unnecessary harassment of our residents based off their identity. It's my observation this situation could have similarly been avoided, much like the Challenger disaster, if we were better listeners and create an environment where difficult, complex, or emotional issues can be discussed with openness and transparency, inclusive of those most impacted. I empathize with the current council that carries still the weight of this legacy. Presently in Farmers Branch, we are perhaps not dealing with issues of life and death, but quality of life issues, to build a community that represents the interdependence of our existence here. I thank all those who live, work, gather in Farmers Branch for their service. In conclusion, I'm here to listen and learn from you and your actions. I value the diversity of voices that have provided guidance through their unique experience in service of boards and commissions. I do not know or understand the reasons for the removals, especially on planning and zoning, but it does in reference to the U.S. Office of Government Ethics Legal Advisory, which prohibits certain actions based off the appearance of impropriety, a situation into which a layperson, without knowledge of the specific circumstances, might seem to raise an ethics question.
especially a practice that previously subjected the council to unfavorable criticism and impaired the public's confidence in the council. To all the helpers, I thank you for your service.
That is all folks that have signed up to this particular item. Council, do you have any questions, comments?
Well, Mayor, as a person who was once removed from planning and zoning by a council where I now sit, I think that the process that was followed while mechanically meeting the stipulation ran afoul, in my opinion, and I am entitled to my opinion, of how we should treat those that are on our boards and commissions who volunteer their services. So I will vote no on this slate of approvals. Unfortunately, I think that it's the wrong message that we send. I think the opportunities to serve our community are limited. And we need to find more opportunities rather than fewer. And so therefore, I've shown my hand, but I wanted to make those comments. It is a difficult decision, but the decision is not difficult for the reason it's how we're treating our residents, all of our residents. And it's the resident who would want to serve on a future board or commission of Multicultural Task Force would have to wonder if they didn't align with the pleasure of the council, and that's not how we should. It's not how we should operate, in my opinion. So, thank you.
I have to agree with Councilman Merritt on this, and I had spoken this previously in both previous study sessions. I don't think that we've handled it to the best of our ability. We haven't communicated. We haven't been as transparent as we could be to the best of our ability. I think we can do better as a council. And, you know, I've already asked for future agenda items, and I hope that that is a consideration of the council, that for the future, in making decisions such as this, that we do use a more merit-based system. So the impropriety or the present kind of perception of an impropriety is taken away, so that we don't have to bear the burden of that as a council.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Mayor. These kinds of processes tend to move pretty quickly, particularly after you get elected to council. One of the first things that you deal with is a board and commission appointment. And admittedly, as a new council member, that's a lot to learn very quickly. You don't magically get elected to city council and suddenly know how to run a city, how to elect boards and commissions. You learn a lot of this on the fly up here. That being said, we've got a fairly new council. This council was elected by voters of Farmers Branch. And so we're here representative of the voters at large in Farmers Branch. And while I respect individual opinions and concerns about the way this process played out, all of those meetings were open to the public. So there was transparency. You may not like the indecision or some of the choices, but I trust my fellow council members to be acting in the best interests of the community at large, which sometimes means certain areas of our communities disagree with our decisions. We've created boards and commissions and given them the power to create subcommittees, and we'll talk about that more tonight, I'm assuming. But we're not reducing or taking away the power or the ability of people to get involved in their community. In reality, and if you'll have an open ear to tonight's discussion, you'll see that we are expanding those opportunities for our community. We're going to make it easier for our community to get involved. We're going to make it less burdensome on people that have jobs or professions or families or commitments to serve shorter periods of time on specific interests that they might have and in multiple places at the same time. So I'd simply ask that the public be patient and be open to hearing some of the changes that are being made tonight, because it is a positive movement for Farmers Branch. And so I do support our current slate of board nominees. The last thing that I'll add is that we each had varying approaches to this process. Some were very scientific, some not so scientific, but still using criteria of an application, a videotaped interview, experience, professional experience, resumes, and past participation in our city. So I'm confident that while not perfect, that the appropriate process was followed. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any comments? I had several people reach out to me in regards to their particular situation. And this council did conduct a critical review of all of our boards and commissions. And part of that review was to evaluate the efficiencies and the workloads on staff as well, and as well as assessing the strengths and backgrounds of each member that presently comprised the board. This year, I think we had a near record number of applicants, so the pool was large. The skill sets, I think, in some instances were more suited to being on boards, for some to be on some specific boards than others. In addition, attendance was a key factor. So let's not forget, we have a ordinance that says that you cannot miss more than 25% of the meetings. And that has been part of the ordinance that formed these boards. There was a lot of discussion throughout the process by all council members, and ultimately consensus and decisions were reached. This was not the action of any one person. It was a collective and collaborative discussion. There was a lot of discussion. Yes, there was. I would certainly invite folks to reapply, and because we don't know what's going to be going on in the future or who's going to serve. And we always have people that term on or come on and then have to leave for some reason or term out. But it is the responsibility of the City Council to recommend members of boards and commissions. And I think we generally want the best and most qualified applicants to be on those boards. And it doesn't help our city when somebody serves on a board and then goes on social media and then bashes the council or the city because your point of view wasn't granted. So again, this was not something that I think anybody took lightly. And so the council has several options tonight. That we can approve the slate list as it is presented. We cannot approve it. Or if you all would like to table this and have more time to think about it, discuss it, and maybe visit with constituents, you can certainly do that.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we table this particular item.
Do I?
I'll
Is there a
second that
second?
motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table this issue for further study. Take no action this evening. All in favor, mark your ballots, or excuse me, just indicate your vote.
It's asking us to approve it. So are we tabling it, or are we?
Why don't you
Should we just do a show of hands?
yes, just do a show of hands.
Okay, all in favor of tabling this item for this evening? Indicate. 2. All in favor of,
In opposition.
in opposition of tabling? 3. Okay, motion fails. So we're back to discussing this, either discuss this slate list further or make some other motion.
Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve the slate list as presented.
We have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Councilman Jackson, second by Councilman Baird. Please indicate your vote. Motion passes 3-2. Thank you. Next is item H8, 9, and 10, which will be J5 on this agenda. Yeah, all 3 of those items will be discussed together.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Congratulations in taking part in this rare opportunity. I'm not asking for money tonight, so.
Approve.
All right. So I have actually a couple of slides. I have this slideshow that I'm fixing to fire up here, and a couple of other slides to go with it. You're making it complicated, David. CW policies. That's it. I'm gonna have a couple of others on the back side of this too that are additional.
When you open them, if it's not a PowerPoint, you want to drag it up.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so this evening I'm going to be discussing 3 policies that we've created in-house within Public Works. And these policies include traffic calming, stop sign request, traffic signal request. And this has come about for a number of reasons, as you can see on the slide here. We've had an increase in public requests for such items. There's been an increase in police call volume for actions that pertain to these items. We're continually researching these incoming requests, which in turn allowed us to develop the policies for the request. When we talk about our traffic calming, we're looking at road humps and speed strips. When we talk about stop signs, we're looking at the standard red stop sign and the illuminated stop signs. And when we talk about traffic signals, we're talking about the addition of a signalized intersection or possibly the removal of a signalized intersection. All of these policies contain a petition process. Please note, citizens, you will not be held at bay when you file a petition. We will help coordinate these petitions and the routes that you take to achieve them. The steps for these petitions are very similar for each one of these processes. Request is submitted to Public Works by the Citizen Project Coordinator. That will be the person that requests the petition. That individual will be the primary contact point for city staff during the duration of the project. They will assist in communicating updates to impacted residents and be responsible for collecting any required petitions. Once that petition has been filed and turned into Public Works, we will then review it. We will look at any data that we can because we want to be as scientific and resolute about these decisions as we possibly can. So we're going to look at accident reports, we're going to look at citation history, and observed traffic patterns. Should it be determined that a safety issue may be present, then we will look at the warrant study as it pertains to each individual request. The stop signs, the addition of a traffic signal, or traffic calming measures. We will also be in contact with police department and fire department for each one of these as well. Now, when you start talking about warrant studies, we get into money. I'm not asking for any. We're just talking about it. When we look at traffic signals, you have multiple steps that have to be adhered to. A basic warrant study runs between $4,000 and $6,000, and you're going to look at an 8-day process for the traffic counts and the speed study, and another 30 to 40 days to compile all that information and create a report. Once that report is put in, you then have additional studies and engineering that take place, which is going to cost you another $45,000 to $65,000, because now they have to determine what type of traffic signal we're using, how many points of entry and exit, ingress, egress are we talking about, and then what type of signal are we installing. Once you determine you need a signalized intersection, you're looking at pretty much a minimum of $300,000. They're not cheap. And just to remove an existing intersection, which is not advised because at some point your traffic load is going to increase and you're probably going to have it back. But to remove a signalized intersection and terminate the power source, you're looking at $50,000 to $80,000. Stop signs. Stop signs do require a warrant study, believe it or not. The warrant study involves traffic counts, starts and stops within a given area, and speed studies as well. These basic warrant studies run between $4,000 and $6,000. They also take 8 days to compile the data, or to accrue the data from the speed study and the traffic counts, and then another 30 to 40 days to compile the engineered report. And then for a basic stop sign installation, you're looking at about $350 with a pole. The decorative stop signs, those run about $1,450, and the illuminated stop signs are $2,650. The illuminated stop signs, though, those are an annual expense. You have batteries, you have solar panels, all of those things have to be maintained. Now the fun one, traffic calming. Traffic calming, it does not necessarily require a warrant study, but it does require additional information. We do have to do a speed study. We do have to do a traffic count. We also have to look at all of the incidents that have taken place within that specific area, such as any type of traffic citations, any type of traffic accidents. We're also going to look at the area that you're talking about. Is it a sensitive area for emergency services? Is it going to hinder response times for fire trucks and police? The cost of a speed hump location runs between $2,000 and $4,000. And then you also have the speed strips, which are smaller than speed humps, but they definitely get your attention. And they run about $1,250 to $2,250 per location. I know it says discussion, but I have more. All right. There we go. And it's not going to show me all of it. We'll do what we can with it. All right, so this is a typical traffic signal petition process. Most of these processes pretty much have a very similar profile. Applicant makes a request to Public Works Department and is established as the Citizen Project Coordinator. We then get into the review process. This may include contracting a traffic engineer, if necessary, to conduct the initial warrant study. The Citizen Project Coordinator will then be notified of eligibility. We then go into the petition mode. Citizen Project Coordinator will then have 90 days to collect signatures, all the signatures required. And once a petition is received, a project will be initiated. We will contract a traffic engineer for warrant studies and any engineering that needs to be done. The Public Works Director, me, will then plan for installation of the recommended project once approval of funding and the project has been achieved. And I know there's some people out there asking, well, what's required for all of this? I have that information. Let's see. All right, it popped up there that time, David. All right, so this is, as you can see, full transparency, folks. This is a stop sign petition. This is the way it was written. Within this petition, you will find the guidelines and requirements. And I'm going to scroll down here to the key points. And we do have some identifying information in here that's utilized by the Texas Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices, major thoroughfares, major arterial roadways, and whatnot. This is some of the information we use for the decisions within these studies. Where a signal is justified, you're looking at multi-way stop, interim. A multi-way stop is an interim measure that can be installed quickly while arrangements are made for an installation of a signal. So that's talking about adding stop signs if we need to in the interim before we apply for a traffic signal. We're going to look at crash indicators. Have there been 5 or more reported crashes in the previous 12 months? We'll look at the vehicle volume. We're looking at averages of at least 300 vehicles per day for any 8-hour average. We're going to look at the combination of vehicular, pedestrian, and bicycle volume entering the intersection. Averages of at least 200 units per an hour for the same 8-hour period. As you can see, the minor streets have a little bit different requirement, 30-second intervals for the highest volume. And then we're looking at the 85th percentile for speed. For the speed of major street traffic exceed, holy cow. If the 85th percentile approach speed of major traffic exceeds 40 miles per hour, the minimum vehicular volume warrants are 70% of the above values, and we get into a definition down here that talks about the 85th percentile. What's required for the petition? 80%. We're looking for 80% of the affected homeowners. Each homeowner gets essentially one signature on the petition, one person per household. That was an effort to make it as equitable as possible. And once you have your 80% of your impacted residents that support the petition, you need 60% of the neighboring streets shall support the proposed improvements as well. So we tried to cover a basis for everybody that could possibly be affected for such petitions. And then once again, once you get down to the bottom, you have the attachment A, which has all the pricing or the estimated cost for the petition, and then the glossary for the important definitions. And that's my rambling. Are there any questions? I'd love to answer them.
So just for the benefit of those who may have contacted council before, does the same apply for a no parking sign or other type of sign like a curve in the road or?
So we're still
Yield.
working, we have a no parking ordinance. No parking ordinance has a very similar profile to these as far as the petition goes and the requirements of the petition. I'm working on an additional policy right now in-house for additional traffic signs. The traffic signs that are not critical to speed and enforcement. So that policy is forthcoming.
Okay. And then if there was an existing stop sign at an intersection and neighbors decided that in their mind too many people are running the stop sign or not stopping, could they upgrade that sign at their expense to a lighted sign?
That would require a petition because it is a lighted sign. It is a change. It is something that's going to affect everybody around them. But yes, it can be done.
So
I'm not going to say that it would be done, but it can be done.
Would that necessitate a whole nother study?
It would not necessitate a study. It would necessitate the petition, though.
Okay.
For the change.
Okay.
And with that change would also come the budgetary requirements and whatnot.
Very good. Thank you. Council, questions? Councilman Moore?
Ryan, thank you for the presentation. I thought it was very important that the residents had an opportunity to hear the new policies and how they are impacting the processes. Could you tell me, when you walk through the petition process, you have a step where the traffic engineer performs the necessary studies looking at the details that were collected during the study periods of collecting information in an 8-day window. Can you help me understand how the collaboration between police and fire work into those traffic calming efforts?
Okay, so traffic calming is a completely different beast to the stop signs and traffic signals when we start to talk about police and fire. When we do enter into a traffic calming request, we are going to involve police and fire, and there's multiple reasons for that. When you start running into an emergency situation, and I can speak from experience because I spent about 12 years in the fire service, and I've operated these engines running through these areas that have these speed humps, and I can attest to the damage that they will cause to a truck if you fail to notice them. You're talking about a 100,000-pound vehicle running over a 6-inch bump at Lord knows how fast, because you're in adrenaline mode, and it will cause an extensive amount of damage, and it can cause a lot of problems. And if you do know it's there, you're having to slow down, ease over it. So you're either going to bounce somebody out of the back seat in the back with an air pack on, or you're going to ease over it, slow down, and miss a window. So we are going to collaborate with fire, and we are going to talk about whether or not these areas are areas of concern for them as far as accessing a home or a residence in an emergency situation. We're going to have the same conversation with police, because if they come through that area, chances are they are moving at a high rate of speed, and trying to control a vehicle if you fail to notice a speed bump can cause another incident or another accident, which is what we don't want to do. The number one, the best way and the most proven way to prevent these speeders and people that run stop sign is enforcement.
Sure.
Chief McCoy is on that. He is working through that. We're looking at plans to address those issues. He's near full staff. He's got people coming out of the academy. So it should get better. But we don't want to go moving too fast, adding additional traffic control devices that could cause us further issues as a city.
Yeah. So in summary, is it going to be too difficult then to actually, while we have a policy for traffic calming, the bar is seemingly super high.
The bar will be set very high.
We know that from the past experience.
Yes, sir.
So just wanted
That's
to reiterate.
as transparent as I can be with you.
Understand. I appreciate that.
We will look at it, but
Sure.
the bar is going to be set very high.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Councilman Jackson?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ryan. Can you go back to the slide, the stop sign petition process?
I will do my very best. This one here?
Right,
Okay.
right. And Councilman Merritt just spoke to it, actually, but I wanted to clarify some of the steps in this process so that folks understand. In the first step, the applicant, the resident, comes to City Hall and says, hey, there's a problem on my street with running the stop sign or speeding, or we need a signal light, whatever that concern is.
Yes.
That resident becomes the citizen project coordinator for that request.
Correct. They are the go-to.
Right. So it might be a good idea if neighbors, are on the same page with the concern, neighbors kind of choose someone to represent them and get some consensus before they come to City Hall.
If there are multiple people that have the same concern, it would be a good idea for them to collaborate and delegate somebody to be their liaison.
Right. So then the next step is the city staff says, okay, there's a concern on this street. We may contract a traffic engineer.
Yes.
Now the city's spending money to pursue this concern made by a resident, supported by a group of residents, right?
Correct.
And we don't know what that's going to cost because it could vary from one issue to another.
Correct.
Right? But is there a ballpark? Is there a range? Are we talking about 5 to 25,000 or 50 to 150,000? What?
These basic studies are going to start in the $2,000 to $6,000 range, depending on which process we're looking at.
Okay. All right. Very good. So again, our citizen project coordinator, right, our resident liaison is going to then be notified, hey, we agree there's a concern on your street with speeding. Go get signatures from your neighborhood on a petition to support remedy.
Yes.
Right, okay. And then there's funding and approval and the action plan that then follows that. I wanted to make sure that residents understood not only their opportunity to engage and be involved in addressing an issue in their neighborhood, but also the responsibility.
Yes.
Right? They're representing their neighborhood, so there's a responsibility and a role that they'll play in addressing this concern.
And in doing so, they're actively taking part in the city budget as well, because they're requesting the city spend money for a cause that affects them. And they also need to understand that if we do agree to do a warrant study, that the outcome of that warrant study may not necessarily be what they think it should be.
Right, I want
We
road
are going to
humps,
follow that.
but I
Yes.
may get strips
Yes.
or, right,
We will follow the guidelines of the warrant study, and we will follow the data that is provided through that study.
right. Very good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
No question? All righty. These three items are marked for action. Do we need to do them individually?
No, you're going to have one motion to approve all three resolutions.
Okay.
Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve resolution number 2023-116, resolution number 2023-115, and resolution number 2023-113 as presented.
Very good.
Mayor, I second the motion.
We have a motion by Councilman Jackson, second by Councilwoman Bennett. Please indicate your vote accordingly. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Very good. Next on the agenda is from the study session item A7. And we do have some folks that have signed up to speak to that.
Would you like Stacy to present again first?
Yes. Who's? Yeah.
There we go. Good evening, Mayor and Council, again. How are you this evening? Stacy Henderson, City Secretary. I'm here to talk about the proposed board consolidation for the Parks and Recreation Board, the Historical Preservation Board, and the Mansky Library Board. So at the Council's annual board appointment workshop, along with discussing appointments, board structure and efficiencies were also discussed. Part of that discussion included combining the Parks Board, the Historical Preservation Board, and the Library Board, as they're all advisory boards to City Council, and they also serve under the Parks and Recreation Department purview. When reviewing combining these boards, Council discussed a broader approach and perspective that could be created. It would allow for a better allocation of resources, and it was also allow for more resident engagement through subcommittees. And I know we've talked about subcommittees several times tonight, so let's talk about what subcommittees are and how they work. Subcommittees, sorry, I changed my slide. Subcommittees are a smaller group of board members that meet in numbers less than a quorum for a specialized project. So, for example, a subcommittee could be formed that wants to meet regarding a specific park to see what amenities that park might need for the future. So those subcommittee board members can reach out to residents that have expressed an interest in serving on a subcommittee for that particular specialized project in nature, and they can attend those meetings and be part of those meetings in that subcommittee. And that project could last for 1 month up to 6 months. And that for this format allows for our residents to be further engaged, but just on a limited scope. And they're not part of, rather than a 2-year commitment of what you see with a normal board member. So also at the workshop, when discussed combining the board, we discussed a board structure that consisted of 9 regular members and 2 alternate members. That structure looked like having 4 Parks Board members, 3 Historical Preservation Board members, 2 Library Board members, and 2 alternates. So Council, what I'm looking for this evening is some guidance on how you would like to move forward. If you would like to maintain the current board structure and move forward with a slate list that was created at the workshop that evening, or if you would like to consider condensing those 3 boards into one, and what you would like to see as far as structure, term, and any other items, since it would be an ordinance amendment. And I'm happy to answer any questions or help you through any process questions you might have.
Mayor, I've got a number of questions, and probably we'll have some more opportunity to talk about this in a little bit. But one question I wanted to get up front, Stacy, is
Sure.
this is a number of boards that we are consolidating, and a big part of that decision process was to try and improve efficiency on our city staff
Correct.
in managing all the boards. Can you or Ben talk to that time, that load on certain people in relation to the rest of your job?
Sure.
And what this does to help address some of those challenges?
This is a common question I've received is there a way to quantify it? Each board is very unique and different, but if we look at a standard board, which we're looking at here, 7-2 structure, the amount of meetings they have per year, the prep that goes into them, the minimum expectation of staff commitment for time is at least 50 hours to support each individual board that's in a standard alignment. And then depending on what they do as far as where they go, what they're participating in, anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000. But then if you add in the staff time, the labor that goes into that, it easily starts to approach $10,000 as the total investment with the board. And the other challenge with the boards from my staff's perspective is there's going to be long nights, there's going to be long days, but the boards do typically meet at night for a couple hours. So that is a full night that's typically taken away in those instances to support the board as a staff liaison. But that's the impact to staff.
Go ahead.
So Ben, we had an email exchange on this. So that's what you perceive as the current. What would this and combining it save?
So 2 out of taking 3 and making it 1, it would just double that essentially. So 100 hours of time being saved, and then the cost would go up from there as well, depending on how you calculate it. There's the budgetary costs that are already in there and the staff time, so 8, 10 more $1,000, yes.
Okay. So I do have one specific question. Are our boards not performance-based? Do we not expect them to do something?
We do not use performance metrics for boards and commissions.
But
aside from attendance. Attendance would be considered a metric that's tracked with the boards.
But if
for
we give them a task, do we not expect them to complete the task? Even if it's a, reach out to the community and bring us back data, information?
If they're directed by council to do a task, yes, but it's not measured there's not a number or value assigned to it. It's either it met council's expectations or it did not.
The board, I want to chime in. The boards that we have are only as good as the direction that they're given from council. And if council doesn't give good, clear, and concise direction, we want to research this. We want you to do that, whatever that specific challenge is, or task is, I should say, then we've created boards that don't have clear direction, don't know what to do in some instances, and so they're just sort of festering and don't know, they're in limbo. And so then they start looking for things or coming up with ideas on their own, which may or may not be what is in line with the council's general direction. So I think it's whatever we do and whatever we have, it's incumbent that we have liaisons that can communicate what it is the city council wants to do, what it is they expect from these boards, and then take that ball and run with it and then report back. They are advisory to council in that they'll do the research. These are people who want to help. And they'll do the legwork and the homework, but it's not for them to dictate the policy.
Okay. So which are we defining as working boards then? Which boards are we defining as working boards? The multicultural will be a working board. The senior advisory is a working board. Were there any others defined as working boards?
I think all of them. Planning and zoning is certainly, the ZBA, the municipal water district. These 3 boards that we're talking about specifically
Working boards.
are working boards, some to a larger extent than others. Okay?
So there can be some performance based on them then.
I would say they should be task-oriented. That's if you gave them a task
Then
or an
did they
assignment.
complete it or not complete it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So just to expand on that a little bit, I'm sure, and I haven't sat in on these meetings to experience this yet, but I'm certain that our boards have sunset reviews of events and different efforts. And so in that meeting, there's satisfactions and dissatisfactions discussed that lead to the next time they put on that event being an improvement or addressing an issue they may have had in the prior event. As I look at consolidating some of these boards, I know that the Parks and Rec Board and the Historical Preservation Restoration Board, to some extent, they're interactive, right? They work with each other on various events because there are events that our Parks and Rec Department are involved in at the historical park, and that involves both boards, and they tend to be working boards in that respect. The one outlier, here's the Mansky Library Board. I don't know, simply because I haven't been a part of that board, to what extent the Mansky Library Board interacts perhaps with parks or with the Historical Preservation Board. Maybe there's events or programs where there's some coordination, but I see this as an opportunity for that to happen. A little bit more collaboration between boards to improve events and perhaps better performance, as you speak of?
You know, I think when we first had this discussion, we were talking about the inordinate amount of time it took for staff to attend all these meetings themselves. And if a council member or members is telling staff, hey, we want to investigate X, and that the board that serves a particular function, and I'll just use this as an example, this is not a literal, but let's just say somebody wants to talk about something going on at the historical park. Well, the historical park, maybe they're working on Y. So that's another set of meetings. And X and Y don't necessarily fit together. Then we've got a little bit of a problem, because now staff is run around trying to gather information for the board to fulfill Y, and they've also spent time working on something a little different for a council member perhaps to do X. And they have a city to run. They have business to run. I mean, this is a business, and that just takes a whole lot of time. So one is maybe to help clean some of that up, but again, the onus for good, clear direction comes from the council, I believe. Two is if we can free up some of their time spent sitting in on meeting after meeting, it will provide them more time to do what the city manager is asking them to do, and be able to focus on more things. I had some residents reach out. They expressed concern that they felt like voices were being taken away from them, and that I don't see that as being the case in this particular instance. And the reason being is if you sign up or if you express interest to be on, let's just say, the Christmas lights subcommittee, you can do that. You may not be interested in Easter or Halloween or anything else, and you may not want or be able to give a multi-year commitment to a particular board. And when we're sitting judging boards partly on attendance, that's important. So we want to allow people the opportunity to work on things that are of interest to them. And they can do that, as we showed, in our meeting, whether it's holiday lights, Halloween, Independence Day, whatever. There's a whole bunch of silos that we do that provide opportunities, and it also opens up the opportunity for people to participate. We have people who live in our city who pay taxes here, and they can't vote. They deserve to be represented. They deserve for their voice to be heard. And that's really important. So I see this creating more opportunity for more residents.
I have some questions for you, Stacy.
Yes, sir.
But before I ask some questions, I think, if I can take a step back a little bit, and I recall, last year when we were going through the budget process, we talked a lot about transparency, and I think transparency is incredibly important in every function of city government, and I think we can always learn to improve and be better communicators with people. So I want to recognize that, I am wrong when I'm wrong, and I'm fully able to recognize that. And, while the meetings were public, where we had lengthy discussion for hours about this, the meetings weren't recorded. But the reason the meetings weren't recorded is because it's just been a practice for many years. Maybe it's an opportunity to revisit whether that's something that we want to consider doing moving forward. And again, while the meetings were posted and were public, they were not also live streamed. So again, I think there are opportunities in the future to try and be better communicators so that people don't find that our approach is startling or came out of nowhere or was in any way, shape, or form politically motivated. It really started off from an idea to a conversation and then led to another lengthy conversation about that. And here we are now, where it seems like this is the first time we're having a public discussion, and for many it is the first time they're having a public discussion, but I do want to at least recognize that. Now to the questions that I have. I did receive a few questions from some residents, so I want to make sure that, that we're providing accurate information.
Yes, sir.
So first, the appointment of boards and commission members, is that a process that involves all of city council members as well as the mayor?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so it's not a process where the mayor has the authority to add or remove members on their own?
No, that
Okay.
is not possible.
And the process for creating, consolidating, or sunsetting a board, that's a process that also involves all of council and mayor?
That is correct as well.
Okay, so that's not a process that the mayor has authority to single-handedly alter?
No.
Okay. Does changing the board's structure, as we're discussing it now, does that require a change in the charter?
It does not require a change in the charter. They are adopted by ordinance, so it would require an ordinance amendment.
Okay. And then correct me if I'm wrong, but any change to a charter is a significant change that would require voter approval?
That is correct.
Okay. We've talked a little bit about the responsibilities of staff members to administering boards, so I appreciate that. That question has been answered for me. We've talked about the decrease in staff responsibilities as well. We've talked a little bit about the subcommittees and the function that they will serve. Can you tell me who can create a subcommittee? Is it council, is it only the board, or is it both?
The board can create the subcommittee as well as council. They can create task force, but the board can create their own subcommittees.
Okay. And you had mentioned that board members or subcommittee members can be people who do not currently serve on the main board.
So your subcommittee consists of those board members, but then you can invite other residents to attend those meetings and take part in those meetings. But your subcommittee board members would lead those subcommittee meetings.
Okay, and so that would allow for people who aren't currently on another board or
Correct.
appointed or had applied to be able to participate and provide input?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I will say, I think that's a really key thing, because I try to listen to some of the things that some of the speakers said earlier, and we've talked about transparency, which I try to address. We've talked about diversity, and we talked about the politicalness that this might allude to. In terms of diversity, one of the problems that I've personally encountered in trying to get some engagement from, we've had this conversation where my district seems to be woefully underrepresented in terms of people on the boards. And sometimes it's difficult because some of the members of the community that I represent are people who, they may own their home, they pay taxes, they're contributing members, but they can't volunteer because they can't vote. They may have some other kind of legal status to be here, but the reality is that they still aren't really welcome to participate and hold one of the 9 roles of a board. So let me ask this: should we move forward with this structure, would those people who have been alienated for some time be permitted to participate in these subcommittees?
They can participate. They're not, those residents that are participating are not required to be a registered voter.
Okay.
Yeah, the resident, yes, registered voter.
Okay. And so for these subcommittee members, would there be a way to be able to, should they want to be on a subcommittee, to be able to do 2 things? First, have a criminal background check ran to make sure that they're not criminals, and to verify residence in the city?
Yes.
Okay. And you've mentioned that a subcommittee could be a temporary type project
Yes,
that would span for a short period of time compared to a 3-year commitment on a board.
Correct. Or a 2-year commitment, depending on the board. Mhm.
And I'm sure you're familiar with the ordinance that was passed by previous council a few years ago, specifically addressing attendance issues.
That is correct. That
And
was-
so there seems to have been an attendance issue at some point that warranted all of council to come together and provide some sort of objective remedy to remove board members who just weren't participating.
That was the, yes, sir.
Okay. And so, so it sounds like with a temporary like subcommittee position, these individuals would be able to serve on a temporary basis where they could determine whether the next 3 or 6 months of their lives they'd be able to attend consistently and contribute. But not only that, they'd be able to contribute for an area of focus that they'd be particularly really interested in participating in.
That's exactly correct, yes.
Let's see. I do have a lot more questions, I think, particularly about the way that subcommittees would be run and some standards that we might have to hold them to. I don't know that we're going to have the time or capacity to be able to have that entire discussion today. So I wanted to see if the council is open to maybe having a specially called meeting at some point prior to the July 11th meeting where we might be able to continue this discussion. I feel like we are moving a bit fast. I feel like right now we're building a car with no wheels, and I want to make sure that if we're going to consider a restructure, that we do so thoughtfully and methodically, and also set up these residents for success in this new structure, because the last thing that I want is to set people up for failure. So those are all my questions that I have, and I just want to make sure that, see what other people's thoughts are on potentially having a special meeting to discuss that, and also to have an opportunity to consider and think about some of the feedback that we have received, and I'm sure some of the feedback that we will receive here shortly.
Good. Mayor, I'll add into the question to Stacy. So the problem statement that we're looking at is that the city staff perhaps is overtaxed and spread too thin. Is that the summation of the problem statement?
That is a summation of, yes.
Thank you. So then my next question would be to the city manager. Is it that we're running so thin that we can't hire another person or persons to facilitate some of this, to continue to solicit and innovate with our boards and commissions and operate in an effective manner? I think part of what I have, and I'll allow you to answer, but I'm going to pontificate just a little bit more. I think we're talking about a strategy here, and my peer at the end, Councilman Roman, alluded to kind of the tactical and operational aspects of this. And I think we're woefully shallow with those tactical and operational elements at this particular moment in order to make this a strategy that has the opportunity to be successful. I think there's a lot more at play here. Understanding the mechanics of sub-work groups and how that would facilitate. It lends itself into my, pea-sized brain from time to time that seems like it's going to take more people to work. And so are we really solving the problem, creating a bunch of sub-work groups to make this happen? And will we get the level and quality of output without some shepherding? And so I really have some concerns over that. So I appreciate the opportunity to continue the discussion, but I'll go back to my question. Do we need more people in these cities' roles to facilitate this?
Well, you're going to always hear there's always a need for more people, but it's always doing more with less is the challenge, being respectful of the budget and the process. The challenge also with this particular level, my board liaisons need to be managers or higher because they need to be able to speak for city resources. They also need to be able to speak with authority on the subject matter that they're liaisoning to with those boards. So, and that usually means these are salaried employees, project-based employees, to where the work doesn't go away if you're not there, you take the next day off, it builds up and compounds. And so I would never recommend adding staff just for liaison roles. There's a lot of other needs that are much greater in the city, in my opinion. But in those, it's a consideration for the greater discussion. There's been some discussions about efficiencies, opportunities, more voices, how it's structured. But that was a consideration as part of the discussion, is what is the time commitment from staff and the resources dedicated to a board. So from that lens, it's just part of the equation. There is a lot of resources dedicated to it. It's easy to look at it as one singular board. It's 50 hours or so more a year, $5,000, $6,000 a year. But when you start looking at how many total boards there are and how many folks have to be at some of those meetings, because some of my boards require multiple staff members to be there. Now, those are boards that are kind of quasi-jurisdictional, but it's complicated. But to say the least is, one of the considerations was the implications to staff, and I was asked to put that information together. How would this affect staff? And so that would be the effect on it either way. But it's the layer of position that's involved in the board liaison process.
Right. And I think we've taken tax in other areas to explore this on a small scale. This seems to be very large scale, and we've eliminated underneath the Parks Board, the Senior Advisory Board was discussed. It's underneath Parks. That doesn't fit this mold. I think there's some real incongruencies that are going on here if we're looking at how we're going to do this holistically, or if we're just going to take that tack, as I said a moment ago, and explore, does this particular model work? So I'm in agreement that this needs further study, and I really don't see this being a huge problem, but that's my perspective.
Councilor Jackson?
So Mayor, if we don't take action on this item tonight and we want to move it to a special meeting, what kind of timing are we up against? What kind of timing are we up against to make a final decision on this consolidation?
So board appointments are through June 30th. However, the ordinance states that they will continue to serve in their capacity until they are reappointed or someone has been appointed in that position.
So we have some flexibility and timing.
Yes, correct.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to make sure that we're mindful of that.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm sensing by comments here that you all would like to table this, so I will just move to table this and we will continue that. Hold on. However, we have people that have signed up to speak to this issue, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to speak. So, first up is Kristen Hansen.
Hello, my name is Kristen Hansen. I live at 13223 Chaliburton Drive, Farmers Branch, Texas 75234. We moved to Farmers Branch in 2010 when we were in our mid-20s and childless. We now have 3 children and are in our late 30s. We love this place. We've stayed in a very tiny 1,200 square foot house with preteens longer than we should have because of how much we love this place. And we fell in love with it because of things like our parks and recreational benefits, the historical park and the library that when my kids were not preteens, I would pull them to in a little red radio flyer wagon with all of our books. The city provides so many great services and programs to its residents. I'm grateful for all of the board members who served on these boards before me and hopefully after me, and the staff who have given us their time, as it is part of their job to do so. I can tell that a lot of thought and consideration has gone into this proposal, but I wonder if there are not some tweaks that might be able to be made to make it even better and to help make our city even better. I love the variety of voices that I get to hear on the library board that I am on. I can't imagine who I would vote off the island if Jeff whatever his name is on Survivor, handed me my tiki torch and said, only 2 of you get to walk out alive. Who's it going to be? I don't know what I would do. I would imagine that the people on the Parks and Recreation Board and the Historical Park Boards feel the same way. So I wonder if it wouldn't be possible to fold all 3 boards in together as one with their existing members as they are and proceed forward and then make an evaluation further down the road. Much has been said tonight also about the attendance policy, and I would like to address that as a board member. The previous attendance policy gave no limit to the amount of absences that a board member was allowed to have. And at each meeting, we could then approve somebody's absence. Right now, on my board, you get 2.5 absences, which is graciously rounded to 3. People have missed meetings on our board because they've been in the hospital because they were bleeding internally. They had a baby prematurely, and it was the day their baby was coming home from the NICU. And it was their child's birthday, all of which seem like reasons to have an approved absence. So I would also ask that you amend the ordinance on absences to allow for approved absences. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Rinkesh Desai.
Hello, my name is Rinkesh Desai, 1753 Hanover Court, Farmers Branch, 75234. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak. It's amazing the passion that you see in this room for people who come out just to volunteer their time, to really give their time for a cause that they really believe in. I started my career in getting involved in my late teens, early 20s with Congressman John Lewis. And I was serving on his diversity council, and I asked Congressman, I said, hey, why do you have a diversity council? Like, you can literally sit back and not do anything, and no one would ever question you. No one ever runs against you. You run unopposed every single year. You do so well. Like, why do this? And he asked me to look around, and he said, you see all the people around here? We're all different. We're all different. And every person here brings something different to the table. What I would recommend, instead of removing the individuals from the board, if the issue is really in terms of we have issues with staff not being able to meet the requirements, increase the size of the boards. There's more than enough work to be done. With that said, yesterday was Juneteenth, right? And we all know it took 2.5 years before the Emancipation Proclamation was really told to the slaves that, hey, by the way, you're free. So we know, it gives us an opportunity to really think about how the government works. It's really slow. It takes a really long time for us to make progress. And we've seen the news in the city. Look, Terry, I don't think you're racist. Omar, you should be representing your district the way you are. I think what you said earlier about people who are unable to vote or, what can they do, right? They're paying our tax dollars, but they're not having a voice. You don't see a lot of different representation here, primarily because they see the things that happen to the very few people that are Asian Americans, right? That are here serving, trying to help, trying to represent the community. They're saying, well, if he can't do it and he's active and he's, working his tail off regularly to represent us, then what difference am I going to make? What difference is what I do going to make? And Terry, to respond directly, Marilyn, to respond directly to your comment about the social media. If you read some of the comments there, I expected it. I was just wondering how long it was going to take. This is the mindset of the people that you are representing today. Let's change that. You can do that today. Thank you.
Next up is Natalie Pakta.
Hi, my name is Natalie Pakta, and I have lived in Farmers Branch. Oh, sorry, I forgot to say my address. It's 3307 Chadwell Drive, Farmers Branch, Texas. We've been there for the last 14 years. I'm a mother to 4 young children, and I feel it is my duty to voice my concerns about some of the recent developments concerning our advisory boards. In particular, I'm concerned about the proposed combination of the 3 separate city boards, the library, Parks and Recreation, and Historical Park boards. I believe this decision will potentially dilute the richness and diversity of our city's offerings and our city's offerings to its citizens. And I recall in a previous study session, and even from a study session today, that similar-sized cities were referred to while discussing our decisions. In that spirit, I did just a little bit of research. I looked up several North Texas cities and their board structures with populations mirroring our population of around 36,000. I looked at Coppell, Weatherford, Midlothian, and Duncanville. None of these cities combined those 3 boards, their library, their Parks and Rec, or their historical boards. They each had different boards for each facility in their city, ranging from 7 to 11 board members. So despite their smaller city sizes, those cities still found it important to have separate boards to offer varying programs. Given our city's size and the diverse facilities and programs we offer, I am struggling to see the logic behind merging the 3 boards. There are community members eager to contribute their time and effort to the city, and by reducing the number of available seats, we are curtailing their ability to participate in the local governance. Proposing to cut 3 boards down to 11 members from the existing 27 significantly limits the diversity of voices that can be heard, especially given that many of the other boards have additional requirements to being a member, including age restrictions, positions in the city, occupation restrictions, etc. The council would be depriving opportunities from the majority of its adult citizens who are passionate about contributing to our city's growth and prosperity. I urge the council to find and present research that shows successful board combinations like those under consideration in a city of our size. Combining the boards on a basis of efficiency is not research. Again, I urge the council to reconsider this move because it will be detrimental to our city's programs and offerings to all its citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Jessica Zavala.
Sorry, I'm short. Okay. Good evening, Council. My name is Jessica Zavala. I live at 2869 Millwood Circle. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm a young professional, mother, and vice chair of the Parks and Rec Board. In April, I received an email asking me to continue to serve my community on the board for 3 more years. With excitement, I replied yes. Last week, I received an email that Council had decided in order to quote-unquote move the city forward, my term will be ending June 30th. My service to the community will end. So many thoughts and questions that I hope to get answered. Why was I asked to be removed? My attendance was within policy. I have volunteered at events. I have never been tasked with an assignment until my last meeting, where the council asked for parks to be reviewed based on the community park audit tool. I have volunteered to audit several parks as a resident. I have enthusiastically shared updates with fellow residents, and I have tried to be a voice for the young families in our community. Aside from that, I served on the redistricting committee that was made of residents of different race, gender, age, and political affiliations. We put all of that aside and worked together to make a map that we unanimously approved for council. I embodied #LoveWhereYouLive. I often use that hashtag when I post about events in our community. My friend recently informed me that I started that hashtag. I take pride in living in this city, and I even joke about being obsessed, as I've never felt so a part of a community, hence the hashtag. If you ask anyone that knows me, they can attest to my passion. Item A7 states the removal of board members and the restructuring of Parks and Rec historical parks, and library boards. The possibility of restructuring and consolidating these important boards with fewer seats does not make sense. Removing members that do not share the same opinions results in losing support from people that are not represented. When people from different walks of life represent their peer group on these committees, they not only contribute to what they feel is important, but they also feel pride, take ownership in their community, and share those feelings with others. You've mentioned transparency at work studies. Who's responsible for advising the boards of possible changes? The volunteers on these boards are committed to their work. What happened? I'm not a council member to know the changes of what are happening at the city level. The restructuring creates further division and reflects the type of leadership you intend to have for the next 3 years. This authoritarian type of leadership has no place in our city and will cause more damage to the future. What is being done is unprecedented, and I hope the actions you make, quote unquote, to move the city forward are with the intent of the entire city's residents and not just supporters at the polls. When you were sworn into office, you took an oath to serve residents and to listen to your constituents. You said there were more citizens than ever that signed up for boards. So why are you limiting the amount of positions available to ask? I ask that anyone that would like council to make a motion to reconsider the restructuring of these boards, please stand. These are your constituents. I hope that you're listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Samaria Kate. Samaria Kate. Shonda Delgado.
Shonda Delgado, 13728 Little Crest Drive. I am a mother of 4 children, ages 8 and younger, and a wife of an ex-Farmers Branch police officer. Today I stand here to speak about item A7, more specifically how it's a perfect example of how the Farmers Branch City Council and officials overlook and underserve families by eliminating their opportunity to be heard and represented, simultaneously affirming that the end of midlife adults and seniors, those that are 50 plus, are at the top priority by not including the Branch Connection Board under its rightful home at Parks and Recs. I have in my hand a campaign poster from the newly appointed mayor that states he will serve all residents, and this action here goes against that promise. According to the 2020 census, only 12% of citizens are of the retirement age. 27 are children. Children in this city. The statistic does not represent the services offered to those children or their parents. A great example of this would be the rec center. On Mondays, the Kids Zone is open for 2 hours for children up to 9 years old, as opposed to the Branch Connection, which is open 12. Children 10 to 13 cannot even use the equipment at the rec center, so they literally have no place there. At the Aquatic Center, the majority of classes are for adults, and they're historically populated by the 50 plus. There is not one parent-child class outside of the lessons that I might add are intended to teach them to swim, and can only be conducted outside during summer hours because the aforementioned classes take precedent year-round. The Frog Pond, which costs taxpayers millions of dollars, is therefore only open at the most inconvenient and hottest times during the year, while it still sits in the financial red, millions. At the library, children under the age of 5 have nothing to do. When I asked for play spaces like Carrollton, Capel, Frisco, and even Dallas offers their children, I was told the city has a very specific aesthetic and my request would be unlikely. Instead, we paint pigeons on the walls and put in fountains that need regular maintenance. While my kids are getting shushed repeatedly for the design of the building, not taking into account children, and the new building gets shot down by the citizens while a for-profit gaming center is considered. Farmers Branch prides itself on being a city in the park. When it comes to parks, there's very few usable spaces for children's needs. There is not one completely fenced-in park in our city, not a single one of them, yet they all sit next to major roads and water. Speaking of water, myself and a group of women have been asking for splash pad for years, but it's falling on deaf ears. Meanwhile, you build a dog park, and that has one. If you're wondering why you haven't heard these concerns before, it's because the parents who need these services are busy raising our children and or working. They can't sit 2.5 hours in a meeting in the middle of dinner time, as I've learned from previous experiences. Phone calls and emails don't get replied. Today, my husband had to rush home. So we could feed our 4 kids. I could make dinner, and he could feed our 4 kids alone, and then I could sit through a 2.5 hour meeting. We're watching. Do better, Farmers Branch. Don't. The children and the families are the future of the city, and that's where we need to spend our time and money. And keeping these boards diverse and separate is how we do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Andrea Pavia. Andrea Pavia. Crystal Rintana.
Hello, Cristal Bertana Lule, 2512 Bill Moses Parkway, Farmers Branch, 75234. Well, I am a lifelong resident of Farmers Branch and former council member for District 1. I'm here today to express my concerns over the current happenings and proposed changes to the boards and commissions, proposed appointments, and overall lack of communication to our residents on major decisions happening within our city. I'd like to read you an excerpt from an email that was sent not too long ago, and it reads, "Thank you for applying for the various boards and commissions positions. Unfortunately, what occurred last night was partisan politics at its worst, in my opinion. It appeared to me that the mayor must have been working with several council members in advance to have predetermined lists of candidates to fill the open positions. Not one candidate that I advocated for was considered. While I hope that the people who were selected will serve our city well, I'm very disgusted by the process and the partisan way things were handled. We deserve better. As a city council representative, my duty is to put the best qualified applicants in positions to represent the city and advise council, not to play favorites or discount any individual based on their political leanings. I hope that you will reapply the next time we post for openings and not be discouraged by this, as I have 2 more years on council and I will continue to advocate for you because of your qualifications and desire to serve. I also hope that in 3 years, when I run for mayor, I will be able to change the system and provide a more transparent meaning of handling the selection process. Signed, Terry Lynn." Mayor Lynn, you have ran your campaign on the basis of integrity, accountability, respect, and communication. The current happenings goes against this, and especially everything that you just stated on the message I just read, which you sent to a constituent back in 2020. I agree that the boards and commissions should be for the most qualified and dedicated, as you mentioned. However, over the past year, we have had potential appointees being blacklisted due to their partisan politics and favoritism, something that you spoke against in the message I just read, and even publicly humiliated. If someone supported your opponent or ran against you or speaks up on things in opposition with staff or council on issues, then they are not even considered or not even asked to return. And a comment was even made that former council members should not have been on commissions. However, several of those you just voted on are former council members. There are many individuals with an extensive background and expertise who have applied and who are on, yet no one will ever be considered because of partisan politics. I ask you, is that showing integrity and respect? Community members, all community members, deserve an opportunity to serve their community. Discussions about these opportunities should be made in public and not behind closed doors. Discussions may be open, but decisions are made before meetings, so is that really anything to discuss? And any changes to boards and commissions, like the current recommendations to consolidate boards and letting go of a number of involved commissioners as not to return, should be communicated to constituents, and we should be a part of the decision-making process. Mayor, that is one thing I remember you would bring up whenever we were on council together, the need for constituents to be a part of the conversation. And so I plan to hold you to that. You said you wanted to change the system, yet it seems that is not the case. So I'm here, as well as many of those individuals behind me, to hold you accountable to the things you promised during the campaign. We deserve to be involved, we deserve to have a voice, and we should not be reprimanded for doing so. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up is Calprina Root.
Hi. Okay, Calpurnia Root. I live at 3650 Jan Lynn Lane. Thank you for having me. So I currently serve on the library board. My family has lived here for, I think, 2 years. I did grow up going to schools in Farmers Branch. My father-in-law served 3 terms for the Parks and Rec Board. My mother-in-law was the PTA president at Vivian Field. And my kids also go to school in Farmers Branch now. So we've been here for a very, very long time. I served on the redistricting committee, and I have to say that that was probably one of my favorite things that I've done here in the city, just getting together with a wide variety of people and getting to meet people. We all had different backgrounds, different perspectives, and it was great for all of us to come together and successfully achieve something. I have 3 kids, 3 and under. One of them was the NICU baby that was mentioned before. So I understand the need for wanting more efficiency. I get it. Like, we should always be looking to improve processes. We shouldn't stop. But my concern is, what about people who want to serve on multiple subcommittees? I told you, Mayor, that I wanted to hear from, I wanted to hear what you had to say before I jumped to any conclusions. If there are people like me who have younger kids and who don't have the time and we want to serve on multiple subcommittees, I don't know that that would be very respectful of their time. I think that we need to do something to accommodate people who have different working schedules and have family lives and allow them to have a voice. And I wouldn't want that to be taken away from them. So I'm not saying that the idea is completely crazy and completely out of there, but I do appreciate that you guys are willing to take it to the table to kind of go through it with a fine-tooth comb and hopefully make it a more representative of what our community needs as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Missy Dewars.
Hello, my name is Missy Dewars. I live at 14223 Coral Harbor Circle, resident of Farmers Branch, born and raised here, and I serve currently as the chairperson for the Historical Park. I am so baffled with all this because I honestly am not really was informed of this decision. I missed a meeting for lunch. I was out of town. My daughter had a baby, so I sent my vice chair, and she didn't tell me what was going on. And I honestly thought that somebody from the council would have met with maybe the chairs of each board, and I don't know if you did, but I was never notified, just to have a discussion. Hey, this is what we're thinking about doing, and these are the reasons why. We volunteer our time, and I think that was probably, a mistake on the council's part, not just informing us. Now, I'm sure there was meetings and discussions in May, but I was gone for the month since she had a baby. But I know for our board, I'm speaking on behalf of our board, we do have a little subcommittee for the Keenan Cemetery, that we have one subcommittee. We are a task-oriented board. We volunteer for all the little things that we have around the park. We have our Easter egg hunt, which a lot of our board members go out and solicit donations and get prizes. We have a person here today that puts the bunny costume on and takes pictures with everybody. So we're a very active board. And I can get that, we get our meeting done in an hour, 1 hour. Respectful of people's time, we get it done. We volunteer our time, and I just don't know. I know the other boards are great too, and they probably feel the same way, but I think we get more done efficiently within our own board. But that's just my opinion, and just take that at heart. I love Farmers Branch. Like I said, I was born here and raised here. I want to see us get better, and I'm for change. I just would like to be more informed of what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, that is all that has signed up to speak to this particular item. I'll ask council any further questions or comments. Okay. Well, obviously, we're not taking any action on this tonight, so thank you for your comments. That is the last of our regular agenda items. We did have an executive session this afternoon to receive an update on a project. No action was taken, so there's nothing to report there. Now, next will be citizen comments.
Motion. You have one motion from executive session.
Richard, I'm sorry, I apologize. Getting ahead of myself.
Mayor,
Councilman Jackson.
Mayor, I move that the city manager be authorized to negotiate and execute on behalf of the city an economic development incentive agreement to provide, one, a rebate of 25% of the company's sales taxes paid to the city for 6 consecutive years, conditioned on the company leasing and occupying approximately 25,275 square feet of rentable space in 5th floor of the building located at 4055 Valley View Lane, Farmers Branch, Texas 75234, for a period of at least 6 years. 2, the minimum sale of taxable items by a company located in the city being not less than $20 million. And 3, that the standard city terms and conditions for incentive agreements apply.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a motion, Councilman Jackson, second by Councilwoman Bennett. Please indicate your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next is citizen comments. We have several people that have signed up to speak this evening. First is Samaria Kate. Okay. John Campbell.
Mr. Mayor, Council, John Campbell, Farmers Branch resident, 1735 Whittington Place, number 2403. I'm speaking with regard to a May 16th agenda item. It was 23-283, which is the Recruitment and Retention Initiative. When I saw that the salaries of police and fire were below those of the neighboring communities, I was distressed. And it was public knowledge, at least at that time, we were down 12 police officers, although the gentleman who spoke about the traffic seemed to think maybe we've got some more in. I don't know the latest, but it seems to me that if we really want to be serious about staffing the police, we should be at least equal or maybe better than surrounding communities. I don't know anything about the staffing of the fire, but I do know that when you need a firefighter, you better have one. And I noticed at that meeting there were several firefighters, as there is one here, so I'm sure that all of them saw that they were being paid less than the surrounding communities, probably told their brethren. So I would think we would want to make those comparable as well. So I urge you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Gabby Cosley. Gabby Cosley. Next is George Broderick.
George Broderick, 13531 Rawhide Parkway. And I just wanted to say something about the Proclamation Day, Pride Day. Thank you, Mayor Terry Lynn, and City Council members for giving our voices back to us. We sincerely appreciate your service to Farmers Branch, and we value your leadership, and we keep you in our prayers. Although we are not in favor of the Pride Day proclamation, we are not against you, and we are pulling for you. We Christians welcome all people into God's kingdom through Jesus Christ. But what does God say about pride? According to his word in James and in Peter, it is the proud that God is opposed to, but he gives grace to the humble. And just to consider God's thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Brenda Broderick.
Brenda Broderick, 13531 Rawhide. Honorable Mayor and Council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for giving us our voice back. We sincerely appreciate and value you. We are not in favor of the Pride Proclamation, but we're pulling for you, and we are with you. This proclamation has given us the opportunity to push back against darkness. You probably just felt that you were being all-inclusive by doing this. Let me assure you that we as Christians love everyone. We elevate and celebrate what's right, pure, clean, and holy. We elevate a man taking a woman to be his wife and loving her and giving his life for her as Jesus gives to the church. We elevate the husband and wife who have children, love them, protect them, read the Bible to them, and pray with them. This is what we elevate and celebrate. We elevate what is beautiful, right, and pure in God's eyes. We elevate the creator of the real rainbow, the rainbow which arches over the earth and whose glorious colors burst into more glorious colors. We elevate the magnificent God who put the rainbow in the sky and covenanted with us that he would never again flood the earth. We elevate the truth. We elevate that there's one God and one mediator between God and man, the man Christ Jesus, who gave his life as a ransom for all, to be testified in due time. When we push back against the wickedness of deviant sex, lesbianism, gayism, bisexualism, transgenderism, and queerism, we are speaking on behalf of the population who knows the difference between right and wrong, and who are on the side of Hebrews 13:4, which states, "Marriage is honorable, and the undefiled bed is honorable, but whoremongers and adulterers God will judge." We are speaking on behalf of our children and students, letting them know that homosexuality is wrong, and marriage between one man and one woman is right. We are speaking on behalf of the great Christian army that has now arisen and is on the march to advance God as our Father, Jesus as our Savior, and the Bible as the Word of God. We elevate truth, righteousness, and justice. I'm going to end by reading Robert Hunt's proclamation spoken at Cape Henry, Virginia Beach on April 29, 1607, when they came and put a large wooden cross that they brought from England and staked it into the shores of Cape Henry. We do hereby dedicate this land and ourselves to reach the people within these shores with the gospel of Jesus Christ, and to raise up godly generations after us, and with these generations to take the kingdom of God to all the earth. May this covenant of dedication remain to all generations, and may this land be evangelist to the world. I have one sentence. May all who see this cross remember what we have done here, and may those who come here to inhabit join us in this covenant and this most noble work, that the Holy Scriptures may be fulfilled. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have anybody else who has signed up to speak. Hold on. Oh, okay. Yes, if you would please state your name and full address, please.
Yes, my name is Walt Nickel. I live at 12927 Burning Log Lane, Dallas, just north of north of Forest Lane, where my wife who was previously a citizen here in Farmers Branch, and we hope to be again. But that's my fondness for the city. But I also want to speak to a couple of weeks ago when the City Council passed the proclamation concerning the LGBT Pride Day, but for a different reason in this case. Certainly in the United States, we have freedom, abundant freedoms to intermarry, and the Supreme Court has given us the freedom to be able to choose whichever gender. However, that doesn't mean that we can't promote our traditional values, and that's what I want to respond with. We can go further than just what has been done so far with just a Proclamation Day. Recently, the State House and Senate have passed a number of bills that I think we should consider in Farmers Branch, some of which are specifically address this. One, supporting the practice of keeping biological men from competing in sports with women. Our Texas House in House Bill 15 just passed this. I think at Farmers Branch we can do the same. Forbidding sexually oriented materials, drag queen type events, if you will, from minors. We did that in our state Senate Bill 12, and we could do something similar to do the same. Eliminating not eliminating the restrictions against child predators, stiffening the penalties, Senate Bill 1527, taking steps to block the chemical and surgical gender transitioning of children, as we did in the state legislature through Senate Bill 14. I know that not everyone will agree with those positions, but I think that those who have grown up in a traditional marriage family and have received the benefits of that should continue to advocate for that. And I would like to see the City Council promote a traditional family values day, supporting all of the things that I just described and more. I want to thank you for your service. Thank you for the time that you've given me to speak, and appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else signed up who would like to speak? Seeing none, we will adjourn at 8:51. Thank you all for attending.